The ironic thing about scarcity mindset is that it stems from this fear that you'll be in want, that you won't have the resources that you need to obtain what you need later down the road. But that leads you to buy more now and therefore spend your resources, so you are more likely to have trouble with resources in the future. And by spending more of your resources, you have less, you feel more in want, and so that makes you more worried. It increases the scarcity mindset. So you're stuck in this cycle that you never really wanted to be a part of. You never agreed to get on this train, but somehow, because you're trying to be responsible, because you're trying to think about the future, you're in this cycle of spending, of collecting, and having less and worrying more for the future. Scarcity mindset is something that affects a lot of us, and it is often very misunderstood. I have kind of misinterpreted it myself in the past, and so I wanted to have a video where I just kind of break it down in a way that I think will be really helpful to talk through and to think through, so that I and you are less likely to get tangled in this trap of scarcity mindset. So as I alluded to, the scarcity mindset is this way of thinking that you're in fear of being in want in the future, that you worry you won't have enough to take care of yourself or your loved ones, and it creates fear. You feel like there is a scarcity of whatever you need or what you want. When the reality is, for the most part in modern society, at least here in the US, if you need something, you can go to a store to obtain it. Obviously, there are a lot of layers of socioeconomic issues that I could get into here where this might not apply equally to people, but that's not what this video is about. The point is, we feel like we'll be left in a desert where we have no access to anything, when that's just not very likely. There are those rare moments, like at the beginning of COVID, where everyone was buying hand sanitizer and toilet paper and masks, and those were in want, and that type of thing. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it is very rare, and often those things are hard to predict. But somehow we as humans have this urge to feel stable, to feel safe, understandably, and that can lead us to constantly collect and buy things because we are afraid of being in want. And maybe this comes from some kind of past experience. Maybe when you were growing up, your family had financial troubles, or maybe as an adult you've struggled and had financial troubles. And so I really don't think it's any one individual's fault. Quite often it stems from a genuine desire to be more responsible. However, things can go totally awry. And even though you're trying to protect yourself, you may be making it more difficult in the future. So there are 5 ways I think people often misunderstand and misapply the scarcity mindset that can lead them to engage in behaviors that just aren't so good for them in the long term. And I gotta say, I have made all these mistakes. Sometimes I notice myself still kind of falling into these traps, so no judgment. This is coming from my own experience as well. The first trap that people fall into is that people overestimate their ability to predict the future. We assume we know what the future looks like. And granted, maybe we know it better than some average Joe off the street. But the reality is, so often things change, and they can change so rapidly. I think about all the books I bought or kept when I was in training to be a psychologist that I thought, oh, I should buy this because it'll be a resource to me in the future, when really I could have just rented it because I ended up switching careers. But things like that happen all the time, where you think you know what you'll need or even want in the future, but then styles change or needs change. Maybe you develop a new kind of medical condition, or you move to a new place that's a lot warmer or different from where you thought you'd be living. But so often we predict based on what is happening now in the present, rather than realizing that by nature, in the future, things will change. So actually, the best way to handle the future is not to try to guess what your life's going to look like now, but instead to kind of prepare yourself for the basics, make sure you've got what you need, but then let your future self figure out what's best for that person. A second common misunderstanding about the scarcity mindset is that people think that it tends to be just about basic necessities or resources that allow you to live a healthy life. But so often it's actually about things that are totally peripheral and are wants, not needs. Let me give you an example. I'm going to own up to it here. Something that came up for me just this week. I was scrolling on Instagram, and this one influencer that I follow for her fashion, I really like her. She's awesome. Her name is Natalie Borton. And she was coming out with some new merchandise because she has this little shop with jewelry and various accessories like purses and things. And honestly, a lot of it is way beyond my budget, so I usually can't shop there. But she did create this belt that's so cute that I thought at the time could be a total staple in my wardrobe. And she also did this thing where she sold belts that had somehow had some kind of manufacturing error in the process. And so she sold some of them at a lower rate. Anyway, I bought one. I was so excited about it and grateful that I had this gorgeous belt. And she only comes out with them every so often. It's not like always in stock. And just this week she was announcing, oh, I'm coming out with more belts. They're going to be available again. And immediately my mind was like, I need to buy one. Even though I already had the belt, I was like, I need to buy another because they're only coming out every so often. And what if something happens to the first one? Or even my mind didn't go that far. It was just like, I need to buy one. It didn't logic it out. It was just like this urge, I need to buy this. And then I stopped myself and I was like, what? What are you doing, Aylin? You already have the belt. You don't need to buy another. Why are you thinking this way? And it was because she only comes out with them so often. I was like, what if I miss the opportunity to get this cute belt? As I'm saying all this, by the way, I fully realize I sound very superficial. Like, I'm not always like this, but I really love this belt and I use it all the time. Like, it is what really amps up so many of my outfits. I was stoked about it. Sue me. But because I knew there weren't an endless number of these belts, I felt like I needed to grab more. But that's the thing. That's what advertising often does. It makes you feel like, oh, we only come out with this so often, or, oh, here's this great deal, 40% off. This is your chance. And you feel like, oh, I won't have this opportunity in the future. And so you have this desire to go buy something, even when it is a total desire and absolutely not a need. Like, that belt, first of all, I already have it. Second of all, I don't need it to survive. You know what I mean? Like, even if I hadn't bought the first belt, I wouldn't have needed that belt because I technically could live without it. And so that's my point here, is that this scarcity mindset can come up not just in like food or absolute necessities, keeping a roof over your head. It can come out in things like fashion or fun new technological gadgets or new cars or a prettier house or whatever. When you feel like you can get a good deal on something or it's a rare opportunity, your brain, or my brain in this case, jumps to, I need it, when really it's just a want. And somehow the term scarcity mindset historically made me think that it was truly about scarcity, that it's like you are in need and so that's why you have this mindset. And I realize the whole point of it is that it's a mindset, it's not reality. But I think it's important to highlight the fact that so often it is about superfluous things, things we don't need, things that are just about fun. To be aware that the scarcity mindset can come up for you in areas that have nothing to do with your needs and are just frivolous is helpful so that you can spot it when it's happening. A third way people misinterpret the scarcity mindset is that I think people see it as a cognitive process, a set of thoughts that leads you to make a decision, when really, quite often, it plays out more as an urge, something you want, or a feeling, an emotion, even a chemical reaction, as opposed to like a cognitive process. Just like that example I gave with a belt, it was this sudden urge that wasn't deeply thought out, it wasn't logical. I just felt this urge to buy the belt, which, by the way, I did not buy because I realized it was the scarcity mindset. But it often takes shape not as this like thoughtful mindset, because again, I think the term can be misleading, but it's just this feeling of want and need and wanting to feel secure. And so it really is quite often an emotional process. And the sooner you can identify that emotion or that urge as it's happening, I think the easier it is to overcome it and not to act on that urge. So next time you have an urge to buy something, notice the emotions, label it as an urge, and try to figure out, where is this urge coming from? Could it be the scarcity mindset? Is it just this feeling of wanting to feel like I will be secure in the future, or that I won't regret not having it in the future? That was a lot of double negatives. I hope I said that correctly. But what is the reason for this urge? And is this really how I want to act? How do I want to behave in this situation based on my values and priorities? A fourth thing people might not realize, at least off the bat, about the scarcity mindset is that learning to combat it might feel uncomfortable at first. It might even feel wrong, like you're doing something slightly unethical or bad, or you're not being a good person, a good caregiver, or a good spouse, or a good friend. But sometimes these emotions can be misleading, and not acting on the urge can feel uncomfortable. You might even feel a sense of guilt or worry or fear, but just because you feel those emotions, it doesn't mean they're true. Sometimes emotions are informative, of course, but sometimes, especially if we're acting on the scarcity mindset, those emotions are actually very unhelpful and misleading. And the longer we don't act on an urge, sometimes the urge will just naturally go away, but other times maybe the fear or the guilt will increase. And so I think it's helpful to be aware of that so that you don't act on that extra guilt or fear that can happen in the longer term. Let me give you an example. Recently, my husband, who's a doctor, he's in fellowship right now, he's working crazy hours. He brought up to me, it would be nice to have another set or two of scrubs that I can wear in the hospital. And he's got a good number of them, but I get it. It's nice to have a fresh pair every so often, and also it's nice to have extras. It makes it a little easier. You don't have to do laundry quite as often, or you have that backup if you need to suddenly go in unexpectedly to the hospital. But he said, you know what though? I don't need it quite yet. I know we're on a tight budget, so maybe hold off a little bit, like maybe get them for me for the holidays or something. And immediately I was like, oh my gosh, I need to go order him some scrubs right now. And then I stopped myself and I said, wait a second, what is he telling me? Like, he's telling me he's okay right now, but maybe in the next few months he might want a new pair or two. And I jump because I'm afraid, like, what if the kind he likes is no longer available, or what if he needs them sooner? My mind jumps to scarcity mindset. I need to buy them now. Anyway, after thinking about it, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to hold off a little bit. Maybe we don't need to wait till the holidays, but maybe we don't need them quite yet, which is consistent with a concept I often talk about, which is to delay your purchases, because quite often that even can save you some money in the long run if you're buying things a little less frequently. But in that process, I did feel a lot of residual guilt. I was like, am I being a bad spouse, a bad wife to not just take the initiative and buy him new scrubs right away? Which, even as I'm saying this, I'm like so cringy. I'm like, maybe after this video I will go buy him those scrubs. I don't know. I haven't decided it yet. And I will talk to him maybe more about like how much he needs them now. That guilt can lead us to purchase things because we feel a responsibility for our roles, or we don't want to let people down. We want to be somebody who is on top of things, who's making other people's lives easier. And so we can jump to buying, to collecting when we don't need to right away. And the reason why I need to remember it doesn't need to happen right away is also that if he were really desperate, if he was truly in need of scrubs, he would either tell me, honestly, it would be nice to have new scrubs now. Or second, he could buy them himself. He knows how to use his phone or his computer to order something online. Like, he only mentioned it to me because quite often the way we divide our labor in our house, often I end up buying things and purchasing things and tracking them and that kind of thing. I know that he's ordered things for himself, so it's not as if he's incapable. He can do it if he really needs it. And secondly, he communicated to me that he doesn't need it quite yet. If I wait a little longer, I might be able to purchase at a better time when there is a sale, as opposed to just buying it now when he says he doesn't 100% need those scrubs. So that was a long example, but do you get what I'm saying? That sometimes the scarcity mindset can play tricks on us and lead to this extra guilt and long-term fear, but we don't need to act on that. Being a little uncomfortable is part of getting past the scarcity mindset. A fifth pitfall of the scarcity mindset is that people often think that collecting things now, preventing the feeling of being in want, will make you feel less in want in the future. That's kind of the nature of the cycle. But the reality is that the longer you are able to not act on the scarcity mindset and instead make purchases with an informed thought process, you're more likely to make purchases that are smarter and better for you. You're more likely to make fewer purchases, and therefore you're more likely to have more resources in the future. So basically, not acting on the scarcity mindset will actually likely bring you more plentiful amounts of resources or money to use on what you need later than acting on that fear. So this is just a reminder, next time you have that urge to buy something, think through, Is this me predicting the future when I don't really know the future? Is this me acting out of fear, or of a fear of I'll miss out on this deal or this product? Or is this really coming from a place of current need or current real desire of something I'll use regularly right now? Remind yourself that if you don't buy it, it's more likely that in the future you can get that dream thing that actually works for you at that point. If you stop yourself from acting for the future so much, then in the future you can actually act the way you want to. Anyway, I hope this conversation on the scarcity mindset was helpful. I think it was helpful for me to remind myself of when I'm shopping, like, why am I shopping? What's going on here? What is this emotional process? How is it tied into the scarcity mindset? How is my past also influencing me in my choices for the future in a way that's actually not helpful to me? And how can I make decisions that are actually better for me moving forward? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on the scarcity mindset, or examples of times where you've fallen or almost fallen into that trap, because I know I shared a couple of mine and I'm a little cringy, they're a little embarrassing, but that's the reality. Sometimes that's the way my mind works. Thank you so much for spending this little bit of time with me, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.